All right, we're going to get started. Hello, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Keith Freeman, and I'm the Director of Marketing for SSP Innovations, and I'd like to welcome you to the Illuminate webinar series. Today's presentation is on utility-focused asset and work management. Today's speaker, Ian Martin. Ian is the Director of Asset and Work Management and Sales at SSP Innovations and has over 20 years of experience in the electric and gas industry. Ian's expertise lies in process technology consulting to design and deliver asset and work management, mobile workforce management, and distribution design solutions using innovative product-focused offerings. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. We'd love to hear from you. So if you have any questions, you should see a Q&A button in the upper portion of your screen. Please enter your questions there at any time, and we'll answer them at the end of Ian's presentation. Finally, a recorded version of this webinar and PowerPoint will be made available in a follow-up email. With that, I'll turn it over to Ian. Ian?
All right. Thank you for the introduction, Keith. And thank everyone for attending today. I'll be providing an introduction to SSP Lifecycle, which is SSP's utility-focused asset and work management product. And that's going to include a live demonstration of the technology. But first, I'd like to give everyone a brief update on SSP, who we are and what we offer. And that's going to start with our strategic partnership with Esri. So SSP is an Esri Platinum partner. We are one of 14 of those Platinum partners worldwide. And our partnership is a strategic partnership. 100% of SSP's customers are also Esri customers. And SSP's founder and CEO sits on the influential Esri Partner Advisory Council. We focus primarily on the utility and pipeline markets. And in that role, or in that approach, we work real closely with the Esri utility and natural resources product teams, account reps, and partner managers on accounts and opportunities. And SSP was the first utility-focused ArcGIS online specialty partner, and we've done more web GIS implementations than any other utility-focused partner. We're a 3-time partner award winner, most recently in 2018, where we were awarded a partnership award for partnering to lead new strategies. That's us helping to move folks into the utility network moving forward, because we are a lead utility network evangelist and practitioner. A little bit about our industry solutions. We offer solutions for GIS for utilities, GIS for pipeline and hazardous materials operators, asset and work management, which we're going to talk about today, and then finally AMI, where we have some technology offerings that are also relevant to our discussion about asset and work management today. SSP has a product suite. Many folks don't know this. They see SSP as a consulting company primarily, but we do have a product suite. We have geospatial technology that allows you to do database and data maintenance in your GIS system. And we also have utility network enabled technology for the future. Productivity, which is an ArcGIS Pro add-in for editing utility network features, and then Sync, which is powerful, exciting technology for creating utility network data sets from legacy geometric networks. Today's focus will be on Lifecycle. So we're going to talk about the Lifecycle product, both the work and assets components of that. It's important to note that we've, through our acquisition of Wind Lake Solutions, added a new technology called SPANS to our product suite. We see it fitting with Lifecycle in the future to help with joint use and third-party attachment management solutions. And then down below, you'll also see our AMI technology, and we're doing a lot of work with the Lifecycle platform and the SSP AMI Ops technology to support preventative maintenance of transformer assets using meter sensor data. The Lifecycle product has been around for quite a while. Our roots go back in asset management more than 10 years to two founding customers of SSP Innovations, NiSource and Garland Power and Light. The first technology was called Sage for a standalone geodatabase editor. Then that became GAME, which was the geodatabase asset management extension. But in 2010, we decided that we were going to take asset management outside of the geodatabase. And so we built, with Garland Power and Light, we built a work management solution and built a database that was offline for that. And then added capability in 2011, 2012 timeframe for managing transformer assets. And we aligned the core technology about that time. And as of a couple years ago, we embarked on an upgrade to the technology, what we're calling WFM 2.0, which is what the technology that you'll see today is really based on. And that's a database enabled with a powerful API that allows you to do integrations with a lot of different technology, and it has an HTML5 front end. And then back in 2017, so last year, we decided that we were going to rebrand all of this technology as Lifecycle. And that's what you're going to see from SSP moving forward is a focus on Lifecycle and additional version upgrades over time. So Lifecycle Assets provides utilities and pipeline operators with an asset register. So you have the ability to enter assets, manage those assets, do asset lifecycle tracking, so tracking events in the life cycle of an asset. You can model your assets hierarchically, so you can have a location, for instance, a pole or a pad, and then you can model devices on top of that, so transformers, switches, reclosers, things like that. You can track the work requests that are associated with the installation or the maintenance or the inspection of an asset. And Lifecycle allows you to manage both fixed and rotating assets in the same database and provides workflows for that. Importantly, Lifecycle is GIS enabled, and that's both in the web front end that we've got, the system of engagement that it gives you access to Esri GIS maps, but also on the back end, when you've commissioned assets, it'll keep your asset registry in sync with your GIS database. All of this helps to support inspections and tests on assets that you have stored both in your Lifecycle Asset Registry and then in your GIS. And then again, we've got a powerful integration framework that ties GIS together with Lifecycle and then allows us to integrate with ERP, materials management, financial systems, etc. Lifecycle Work provides you with the ability to manage your work request lifecycle. So you get the ability to do project and job tracking. You can manage process checklists or project checklists. You have the ability to do compatible unit estimating. So you can manage your compatible unit library inside of Lifecycle. You can create different estimates and manage different scenarios for your work requests over time. You can do material reservation when it comes time to, when a design is approved and it's time to reserve materials and make those available to construction crews for construction. And then finally, to support a digital workflow, you can do as-built reconciliation directly inside of this system. And it's in that way, in serving as this central collaboration hub, you have the ability to do attachments and comments and everything really is in front of your end users and gives them the ability to get access to the information they need. And again, it's the same powerful integration framework, typical interfaces we see on the work side or with GIS, CIS, CRM, your ERP systems. And then finally, when you're doing your asset commissioning and you've closed your job, you can do accounting reconciliation with your financial system. Lifecycle provides a unified process workflow. The systems work together and really enable this asset management process. We typically see it begin with the initiation of a work request that's then designed and scheduled and built, and then finally the assets are commissioned and then they're placed into service. And now we can enter a maintenance cycle, and so you can start to manage that asset life cycle. You can perform inspections. You can do plans for system enhancements and improvements, and then finally, when it's time to retire that asset, you can start that process all over again. So at this point in time, we're going to conduct an attendee poll. So this is the first of two that we're going to do, and just like to know what the attendees on the webinar today are using for their enterprise asset management system. And we'll hold here for a minute or two, and then we can proceed. All right. Good deal. Okay. Thanks for taking part in that. That's very helpful. I'd like to segue out of that poll into a discussion of Lifecycle as an enterprise system of engagement. Because some of you already use other enterprise asset management systems, or in the case of about half of the poll respondents use your GIS, in these cases, in these situations, you can implement Lifecycle as an enterprise system of engagement. You'd install it alongside your existing enterprise system of record, and in doing so, you recognize and respect the investments that you've made in that technology, and you complement and extend those capabilities that you have in your system of record. What Lifecycle allows you to do in that implementation pattern is implement processes and interfaces that are impossible or infeasible or expensive in your other system. And it does this by providing you with an elegant user experience, an intuitive user interface, and again, that powerful API that we've been talking about that enables Lifecycle to serve as an excellent business unifier. So at this time, we're going to transition to live demonstration. We're going to work through both the assets and work components of Lifecycle. And Lifecycle provides dashboards for two general classes of users. You've got asset managers and those that are interested in asset-related information. And then you've got work managers and those that are interested in work-related information. And we're going to do an introduction to both and provide just some scenarios that are both that are going to touch on both maintenance and capital construction processes for you. And when we conclude the demo, there's going to be an opportunity for some Q&A, so you can start thinking about maybe some of the things that you'd like to ask when we do that live Q&A at the conclusion of the demonstration. Okay, so what we're looking at right now is the assets dashboard inside of Lifecycle. It's important to note that the user interface components that you're seeing here are configurable. This demonstration instance has a widget that's got a graphic that shows you assets by status. It's interactive so that you can do things like turn off your active GIS features and see what the distribution is of your other assets across different statuses. And then you have a stack panel down below with a grid control that shows you details about assets with recent activity. And I want to make it clear that you can adjust this dashboard to fit your needs and tailor it to what your asset managers are going to want to see inside of your organization. There are different ways to get access to information inside of Lifecycle. So the first one that we've seen here is that you can just click on an existing asset that's had recent activity and click on that. We'll pick this one right here out of the list and take a look at a transformer that we've got in stock. So what we're seeing here is a transformer that we've got in inventory. You can tell that we've got asset nameplate information. We've got some engineering details. We've got some purchasing information. We've got asset lifecycle entries for that asset. And then down below, we've got different panels that allow us to display additional information for that asset. We've got the asset hierarchy. We've got related work requests. We've got attachments and comments. And I'll show this capability off as we get a little bit further into our demonstration. There are other ways to get access to the assets that you have in your asset registry. So you can also use the search panels here. So I'll do a wildcard search, and we'll do L9B, and then give ourselves a wildcard, and that's going to return a result set for us. And that result set has every asset code that contains the text string L9B, which is a location-based string that we've got for our asset code. And you can see that we've returned not only transformers, but also poles. And so I can do things like filter that list just by type and just get the transformers back. And then when I do that, I can go in and I can review one of those assets the same way that I had picked it out of the most recently viewed list. Another important thing to note about this asset screen is that you've got links to other systems. So I want to show off the capability to navigate to the construction standard that governs this particular asset. So I can click that, and it'll take me to the compatible unit that defines the construction standard for that particular transformer. So I can see the details about that there. I can see its FERC code. I can see that it's an active CU that I have the ability to install or add to a job. I'll close that out, come back to my asset details, and we can also then take a look at the map. So we can go and view that asset on a map. And what we've done here then is link to an ArcGIS server web map. We're displaying a variety of different feature layers inside of the map. You can see those here on the legend. And then we've got some tools that allow us to select different features. And right now we've defaulted to Transformer Bank because that's the selection that we came in on from the asset details page. I can dock this form off on the side. You can see that I've got access to my GIS details in here, but I can also always go back to my asset, link back to that location. Once I've got that asset selected on the map, I can review information about it. I can zoom in and take a closer look at other features that are in the vicinity. I can also add this to a selection. And when I do that, I have the ability to perform actions on that asset. So in this case, I've got this single asset that's in my asset selection, and I can create a transformer inspection with a due date of Friday. And when I hit the Create Work button here, it's going to fire off a work request, creation request to Lifecycle Work, and now we've got a work request that we can go and review. So I'm going to go and have a look back at that particular asset. We're going to refresh our screen here. And then when we scroll down and we look at our work requests down below, we can see that I've just initiated this transformer asset inspection. And that was what I did from the map there. Now, it's important to note that when I was doing that, I could have selected several transformers. And say, let's draw a box around several of these transformers. Close that off. And when I build an asset selection from that, I could initiate inspections for all of these transformers, not just the single transformer that I had selected initially. Let's go ahead and clear that. We'll close that out. We'll come back to our work request that we've got over here. Now, this work request is live. I can click on that link, and it's going to take me over to Lifecycle Work, where I can review the inspection that's been created. So using Lifecycle Assets, I can create maintenance plans. I can set up inspections that need to happen either on an ad hoc basis or on a cyclical basis. I can tie the initiation of inspections to asset state transition. So when an asset's placed into service, I can schedule the follow-up inspection that I need to perform on that asset in a year or 3 years or 5 years. So I can have that sort of control over scheduling those maintenance activities and inspection activities. We'll go back to this asset detail here. The other thing that we have the ability to do within the system is add attachments and comments. So I can do things like select the file that I want to attach to this particular asset, like the PO that was associated with that particular transformer purchase. I can do additional things like add comments. So I can say, we need to inspect this asset. Doesn't want to give me access to the website. That's okay. We'll post that comment, and then that's available for us to be able to review. So the other thing that I want to do is do a search for a particular asset inside of the system. So I've showed you how we can do a search for a group of assets, but now I'm going to find a particular. So I'm going to type in L9C-012-S, and we'll find a specific asset code inside of the system, and that's going to take us to a switch. So in this case, we found a switch. Again, this is a switch that's in active status inside of the GIS. We can map that switch as well. We can also see the construction standard that defines how we utilize that switch. But in addition, we can see a bunch of different life cycle events for this switch over time. And we can see work requests that go back to when that switch was upgraded. So we can look at that historical work request, not just the work request that's an active maintenance request, but we can go back and look at historical work requests. So that's an important capability. And then finally, we can look at asset hierarchy. So we can view this switch in the context of the location, which is its pole, and then also if it's got any child assets that are associated with it. So in this case, we've got a battery that is utilized in the SCADA system to help operate that switch. And we've got that asset maintained within the system as well. We can click on that asset, which is a non-GIS asset, and we can see details about that. And again, we can see its asset hierarchy as well, which is basically back to the switch that it's associated with. So we'll go back to that detail screen here. So shown you a little bit about how to manage existing assets that you have inside of your asset registry. You've got the ability to search for those either through the map, select them through the map, or get access to them through your search panel inside of the of Lifecycle Assets. You've also got the ability to create new assets. You can import assets from a manufacturer's delivery manifest. You can copy existing assets that you've got in the system and say, for instance, create another transformer or switchgear that matches the asset that you just entered into the system. So you have the ability to do a lot of that, general asset management housekeeping. And then the last thing I want to show you is this aging report. So what I've done is I've set up an aging report that says I want to see assets that have been in their current status for more than 4 months, where they've got an inspection that's been scheduled, and that means that they haven't been completed. So I'm going to generate that report, and then we're looking at transformers in this case, and it's going to open that up for us. Yes, we want to see that. And so we get a report out of the system that allows us to view details from that asset register and then be able to share that with other folks that need to get access to this information. So this is an example of just how we can use Microsoft Office tools to get data out of the system and then use that for reporting and collaboration purposes. I'll close down some of these windows now. We'll get back to our asset dashboard. So that concludes our introduction to Lifecycle Assets. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to the Work component. You get access to that by just clicking this Work tab on the side panel. And what you get then is this Work dashboard. So this one is more focused on a work manager, and it's organized in a way that you've got different work requests grouped by either your ownership of them, your responsibility for certain tasks or requirements on them, or you can see tasks or requirements that are unassigned that are relevant for your role inside of the organization. So my role as an administrator means that I get to see everybody's things, but you can imagine that an engineer would see things differently than somebody in operations or somebody in accounting. And we've got some examples of that down below here, where we've got some administrative requirements. For instance, we need to send a pre-bill letter, or we need to do a billing account setup for accounting purposes, or we need to issue a bill for construction charges. So those are examples of requirements that might go to different folks inside of the organization. The way that these are organized fundamentally is that I get my work requests grouped for me up at the top. So these are work requests that I've created or that have been explicitly assigned to me to perform some action. So I have control over the life cycle of this work request now at the state that it's in. There are other work requests in my list that belong to my role that are unassigned, and I can take ownership of these work requests simply by clicking on that link and picking the reassign request and giving it to myself. And now when I come back to the work request dashboard, I won't have any unassigned jobs. I just have my requests. And then the next section is my job requirements. So these are project tasks or project checklist items that have been assigned to me by somebody else. through the magic of demonstrations, I am, in many cases, the one that assigns myself the job requirement. So in this case, I get an email whenever I have assigned a job requirement. And this comes from the Lifecycle system. So it's got a built-in notification capability that you can enable for just about any state transition within the system. And in this case, what's happened is that when I created a process checklist, I got a link back to this work request that says, hey, you're in charge of doing the site visit. So if I come and look at this and click this link, it comes back into where we started from, which was somebody assigning me a job or a task based on this project checklist that's assigned, that's created on a job or type by job type basis. So in this case, we've got a capital construction work request, and these are the project requirements that are associated with that particular job type. And I can assign these to anybody in the system, or I can leave them unassigned, as was the case with the administrative, accounting, and system tasks that were listed in the system. But I've got other things that have been assigned to myself or Corey or Adam inside the organization. So how do we utilize this information? If we go back to the work request, when somebody assigns me with the site visit, then what I can do is I can go in here and say, okay, I'm going to be the engineer, so I'm going to take control of that, and I'm going to set my work status, or set the assignment to me, and then now this is still an estimate new, but it's assigned to me, and I have the ability now to do things like create an estimate for that particular work request. So we've got a customer that's called in, and they say they want to do an overhead to underground conversion at their house on Woodview Street. We know from our experience that this is a backlot construction, so we're going to have to call up the customer. We're going to go and do a site visit and look at access restrictions. We're going to potentially talk with them about what they want to do. And one of the things that we can do, because Lifecycle is an HTML5 app, and you can run it on a tablet, and if you're connected in the field, you have the ability to get access to your estimate worksheet while you're standing there talking with the customer. Now, I want to be clear that this is not a graphic design that we're going to be doing here with this initial estimate, but we can be standing talking to the customer and listening to what it is that they need from us, and hearing from them about access restrictions, or situations that they want us to avoid whenever we're going to go in through their back lot. So I can start editing, and I can start to look at the situation here, and I can say, you know what, we've got a problem with being able to get stuff in there. So we're going to update all of these. We've applied basically a cost code to this work request now that says we're going to have to carry in the materials for this job. So I can add a work location to this particular work request. And what we've got here is we're going to have two work locations that we create. We're going to save both of those. Got to tell it that it's a point, and that this is a point. We have the ability to create spans, like say from 1 to 2 as well. I'll go ahead and show that off. Why not? Is a span, and then we can save each of these. Now that I've got work locations, I can go in and I can start adding compatible units to those work locations. So I can add a unit. In this case, we're going to need to upgrade the pole that's at that location. So we're going to, first of all, do a remove of the OH45 that's there. And I'm going to hit Shift Enter, and we're going to do an install of an OH50. And then we're going to put in a UG 2710 single phase a single, I don't want that. I want a 2700. Single phase riser. We're going to save that one. And then we can, on our second work location, we can add a unit that is, and I'm going to use my selector this time. And I can pick the type. We're going to do T25, category transformer. There we go. Well, we'll just overbuild this because it was the first one I found. And so we have the ability now to add this information in there, and then we can put the details around the materials that we're going to add in between. So we can put, again, we'll use our selector, and we'll do category primary underground conductor. And now we've got the detail that we can share with the customer about the raw costs. We can apply revenue contribution calculations to this so that we can see what the customer's contribution would be. But we've got information that details what our material costs, what our equipment costs, what our labor costs are for this particular job where we're going to do an overhead to underground conversion of backlot construction for a residence. So that's just real quickly how we can perform that sort of a compatible unit estimate. Again, I want to reiterate that this is just a non-graphic estimate. If we wanted to do a graphic design, then we would typically interface with technology from partners like TC Technology or Spatial Business Systems or some that we've done in the past with, say, Schneider Electric Designer, and we would support pulling in that graphic work design and updating the estimate with details from that system. When I'm finished with this particular estimate, I can come back here. I can click on the initial customer contact and the site visit requirements, and I can say I want to complete the selected requirements. And what that does then is it indicates that on today's date, I was the one that completed those requirements, and this can then go to the next step in the process. So we can go back to the work request. We can actually send this to a designer to build the design, do the graphic work design. We can then, once that's completed, we can load that design into Lifecycle. We'll get an estimate that says, hey, we got that back. And then we can start working through the rest of our process, which is, okay, we're going to do an engineering approval on this job. Again, I'm going to be the one that's assigned to that. And these workflows that you're seeing here are all configurable. They're based on the procedure that you've got in place at your organization to be able to drive a process from start to finish. And they can be different for different types of jobs. They can be different for capital construction jobs. They can be than they are for maintenance jobs. They can be different for overhead jobs than they are for underground. They can be different for distribution than they are for transmission than they are for substation. So there's a variety of different approaches that you can take here, and the tasks and the transitions that you have available to you are 100% configurable. We're going to approve that design. We have to tell the system what the active estimate is. So I'm going to go back to that initial estimate and go to the graphic design estimate. It is the active estimate. Okay, we'll go back to a different one, see if we can't get to show what we've got going on with that. So once I've performed a design and I've gotten it constructed, then I can go in and I can look at my as-built for that particular job, and we can see details about that. And you can see the materials that were installed, the as-built quantity versus the estimate quantity, and what it took to complete that job. And then finally, when we're done with that, we can send this off to GIS so that they can do the updates to the GIS and do the asset commissioning, and then reconcile that with the engineering or plan accounting system to update unitized costs for those materials. So with that, we're going to conclude the demonstration, and I'm going to do asked to do one more poll before we move on regarding plans for implementing or replacing an enterprise asset management system or work management system. And again, I appreciate your participation in that poll. And then once we've concluded with the poll, we'll move on to the Q&A portion, and I'll hand controls back to Keith so that he can facilitate that.
Wow, dead even.
All right, thank you again for participating in those polls. I really appreciate that feedback. So Keith.
All right, thank you, Ian. Just a reminder, please be sure to use the Q&A button in the upper portion of your screen to enter your questions in. Looks like we have a handful already. Let me read off the first one. You mentioned system of engagement. Can you expand on how that can work if I have Maximo already?
Yeah, so if you've got a system like Maximo and you want to implement Lifecycle, what you would do there is utilize Maximo as the system of record, and then put Lifecycle in to facilitate ease of access or ease of use to folks that don't necessarily need to be using all of the capabilities of Maximo. So things like those project checklists that I was showing you, or you could very easily update details that would take many screens inside of Maximo to update. The estimate worksheet that I was showing as well, while it's very similar to the compatible unit estimating capabilities in Maximo, it's also a little bit more streamlined and allows you to do estimates a little bit faster. But at the end of the day, when you're finished with that estimate, or when you want to update those project details, you're gonna record that information in Maximo. Maximo remains your system of record. You've just simply made the Lifecycle system that simple to use interface to get access to Maximo information.
Excellent. And just another note, we're going to have another webinar on Lifecycle and the system of engagement topic later on in the year, so be on the lookout for that. Okay, next question. Can I manage all my assets inside of Lifecycle?
Yes, yeah, you can. Lifecycle's really designed initially to manage plant assets, but since it's been implemented, we've been asked to do things like manage equipment, trucks, and pole trailers, and pressure diggers, and things like that, and even things like tables and chairs and desks in the office. So if you've got it set up to be your enterprise asset management system, you can utilize it for a variety of different things. There aren't really any limitations on the types of assets that you can manage. the asset life cycle allows you to be really flexible with what you're doing with those assets.
All righty. Okay, questions are really coming in now. Can I manage, you mentioned the ability to do compatible units estimating. Can I generate multiple estimates?
Yes. Yeah, so one of the things that I was trying to do to get past the little error that I saw was change to a different estimate, adjust my active estimate. So I had a handful of estimates that had come into the system. I can create different scenarios. I can create, for instance, an estimate for budget planning purposes for next fiscal year. And then when it comes time to update that estimate, I can either duplicate it and update it with new costs for the current fiscal year, or simply update the estimate and validate that estimate against current material costs and equipment costs and labor costs. So there's a lot of capability in the system for managing scenarios and creating different estimates, and then controlling which one's going to be the active estimates that is actually going to get constructed.
All right. And next up, can Lifecycle integrate with my plant accounting?
Yes, absolutely. So it's kind of goes without saying that there's going to be an integration with your accounting system when it comes time to build out the asset management capabilities, but also the work management capabilities. So when you're building a capital construction job, and you've placed those assets into service, you also want to spread the cost, so unitize the costs over the materials that you put in, and then feed that back into accounting as well. So all of that capability is supported through the Lifecycle API, and SSP has a lot of experience doing integrations with various different accounting and ERP financial systems.
Okay, these next two questions came up during your demo. Are the assets populating the web page coming directly from GIS, or is that a separate table that needs syncing?
So, yeah, let me think about that. So we had a map, and the map was actually coming directly out of the GIS system. When we're talking about the asset registry, that is a table inside of the Lifecycle database, and you link the asset data that's in the Lifecycle database with the data that you've got stored in the GIS. And I see another question down here that somebody asked about. How do you keep the GIS features answer or in sync with what's stored in the GIS? And so what happens there, you can store, and it's assumed that you store certain information inside a Lifecycle, like say the asset nameplate and potentially purchasing information, things like that, and then you store the spatially related information in the GIS. That's kind of our base assumption. And then what happens is when that asset is installed and commissioned, there's a capability that synchronizes that asset with the GIS, and so you get information that's stored in the GIS pulled into Lifecycle, and information that's stored in Lifecycle potentially shared back with the GIS. But the bottom line is that you've got a link between those two so that you can use it for mapping and analysis purposes.
Cool. All right. Next one during the demo. When working with the estimate worksheet, can it integrate with automated utility design software?
Yes. SBS AUD is one of the technologies that Lifecycle is pre-integrated with. So that's and we're working closely with the SBS guys, not only on technology but also on different opportunities moving forward. So it is absolutely supported.
Okay, excellent. Okay, this next one is relative to a webinar we have coming up. But how does SSP Lifecycle differentiate itself from CityWorks? Are you competing with Azteca?
We don't. we have a really good relationship with Azteca, and they view SSP as a strategic partner in the utility space. We look at partnering with Azteca and implementing Lifecycle as a system of engagement, where CityWorks is that enterprise asset management system. So in that case, CityWorks is not a compatible unit aware technology, and so pulling information out of say their storeroom, if you wanted to build out a job, you would have to put every single nut and bolt and connector and things like that into your system. And what Lifecycle allows you to do is aggregate up that detail into a compatible unit or a macro unit, and then pass that back into CityWorks and update the Elm model inside of CityWorks. So we view it as a compatible arrangement between the two technologies moving forward, and we have a real good relationship with those folks.
Excellent. Okay. Does Lifecycle work with NISC, iView, MapWise, or Workforce?
It can. So NISC has an integration capability through Multispeak that would allow us to communicate between the Lifecycle API and NISC technology using that, they end up being SOAP messages that are enabled through Multispeak and our API. So that is absolutely feasible, and something that we could make work with Lifecycle. In that case, it would just be, you know, Lifecycle implemented again through that system of engagement pattern to support the business requirement that you have there.
Okay, thanks. Okay, this was during the demo. What about linear underground assets? I'm sure there's enough context there.
So, yeah, so this is something that's coming up as I work with my colleague Clark Wiley. We're talking about how we're going to utilize the Lifecycle system to maintain linearly referenced assets in a UPDM model for both for gas distribution, gas transmission, but then also pipeline and hazardous materials, you know, natural resources implementations. So when you build out a linear reference model like that, you need to be able to maintain the assets just a little bit differently than you would if you were, you know, looking at a wire strung between two poles. Because you get into situations where you're going to be splitting or combining assets over time, taking sections out, putting in other sections, having a segment of plastic that's in between, you know, a couple of pieces of cast iron or steel pipe, things like that. So what we're doing with that is we're building an asset loader that's going to basically take the information out of that UPDM model and build your asset model inside a Lifecycle, and then keep that synchronized with the information that you've got in the Lifecycle system.
Okay, next question, maybe our last. In what formats does this information come into GIS? Is there any automation associated with getting it into that system?
In what formats does this information come into GIS? Is there any automation associated with getting it into that system? The automation is essentially there with the Lifecycle interfaced with GIS. So what we have, if we're talking about graphic work design interfaces, the typical method for SSP to affect those integrations is to use feature services, Esri feature services in the GIS, and then we can directly communicate with those through the REST API and the Lifecycle REST API. The other mechanism is through code that's written through the Esri SDKs that allow you to to open up a particular feature inside of the GIS and then share information. So that would be, typical, like typically through like an Arc Objects or an ArcGIS runtime implementation, which is what you would see in Pro, where you're going to open up a particular feature and then update information on that. Yeah, so it's typically a services-oriented approach to doing that. I hope that answers the question.
Right. It looks like we're near the end of time. Let's see. Well, one more. What is the timeline for being able to handle the linear assets?
Soon. It's not there yet, but it's coming, and that's really being driven by the fact that we need to support our customers that are vertically integrated gas utilities, and then also our customers in the pipeline space. So it's something that's coming soon. I see a couple other questions. Do you have a live implementation of work and asset together? The answer to that one is not yet. We have a lot of customers that are using either one or the other, but I'm working with two organizations right now that are gonna jump in and utilize one or the other of the technologies to complement what we've already implemented for them. So that's coming soon as well.
All right.
And then have you implemented Lifecycle for a diverse organization, including a parks, assets, street and traffic assets, solid waste, and more? No, we have not. It's been primarily focused on electric and gas plant assets, like I mentioned before. But the capability exists so that you can do a lot more with the technology. In a case like that, with streets and traffic and solid waste and a parks department, you're probably better off from a product maturity standpoint of going with a technology like CityWorks.
All right. Well, it looks like we covered all our questions. Ian, is there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
No, that's it. I just want to thank everybody for participating today and engaging with us and asking these great questions. And look forward to having another one of these sessions soon, and hope to hear from you guys in the meantime. And we'll we'll see you at the UC if you're going to be there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, our next stop is the UC. If you're there, please stop by and say hi. Thanks to our presenter, Ian. And thank you for those this today. We'll see you at the a reminder, we will be sending the webinar and PowerPoint in a follow-up email. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ian.